Every one of those cars touched somebody's life, and I'd hate to see how many people, millions of people down the chain, if you could add it up, that have a story to tell about what's on this table here. Ray Cato sitting here next to me from Vicksburg, and that's halfway between here and between where a lot of this stuff took place. I'm sure you got a story or two to tell us about a car on this table.
But where it started, where it's at now, takes a long time to tell. I said the other day to a friend of mine, I wish there was some way to get Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, and the Wright brothers all to come here today to see what they did. Because these kids now that are starting in programs when they're 9, 10, 11 years old, being brought up through an education to race, got contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time they get into their teens, got $1 million contracts when they're in the early 19 and 20 years old. Have no idea where this come from.
Well, that's the evolution of the whole thing, and that's the reason we're trying to do this, is to carry on the old school tradition and let people know where the history and foundation of racing came from. And I mean, there's plenty of books. I mean, we see it on TV, you know, Speed Channel, and they do documentaries, but there's a whole lot of grassroots racing that never gets that story told. They start at Daytona on the beach, or they start telling some stories along those lines, you know, and they do the Richard Petty stories. And I'm not saying they earn their fame, and they come up, the Earnhardts and all those people that came up through their racing, they know that. But at the end of the day, there's a whole lot of guys that are on local tracks that they wouldn't come to those local tracks because they know to get their ass handed to them. You know, there's cars here from Rusty Wallace and people like that that were on this track that would not come back here on a regular basis because the locals would hand it to them. They'd go somewhere it was easier to race. So we want to tell those stories. Tody, I mean, you started your website, didn't you, because of that?
That's correct. My father raced here in Jackson. Oh, he started racing in the late 50s and raced through 1967. 1967 is when all the dirt tracks closed, because Jackson International opened up in 1968, which was the asphalt track. Anyway, Dad got out of it because he was a dirt track racer. Car sat behind the shed and all the weeds, and anyway, Thanksgiving 2002, we got to talking about it, and Dad was upset because he didn't take any pictures. Never took any pictures. So I started looking for pictures. And I found out that Mississippi racing history was in shoe boxes, shoved in the back of closets all over the state of Mississippi. And there's some beautiful pictures and wonderful history about all of this. So I started collecting them, and I turned our restoration site, MissChicken.com, because that was the name of my dad's car, into a Mississippi racing history site also. So I started collecting all these pictures from the 50s and 60s, most of them black and white, as you was talking earlier. And the first time I met Ron Dearman, Ronald had brought all of his cars to the Mississippi Racing Extravaganza. And I walked in and got a chance to look at these cars for the first time in full color, and was absolutely blown away by the detail that he had put into these cars. It was absolutely amazing. And of course, I had to have him make one for me too.
Well, didn't you recently restore the Mississippi Chicken too? Because I'm in the restoration business, as you can see, in the collector cars, and preserving that history to me in any kind of car is something that we need to do. And the fact that they have don't they have legend races? And I believe I've seen that car on a track here in the last couple of years, opening a race or driving around a Legends race or something around here. Is that true?
Absolutely. Like I said, my father got out of racing in 1967, and the car was in pieces all around the house. So Thanksgiving 2002, my mother had died in 2000. My dad had a little bit of time on his hands. So we drug all the pieces together and started putting them together. And I tell everybody, it took us 3 years and half my inheritance.
I know that all too well.
But we put the car together, and in 2005 it took the track for the first time and drove around. And we take it around to different tracks, especially on big occasions, and carry the national flag, the flag around during the national anthem. And it's fun. It's fun to get it out on the track and run it. We rebuilt the car exactly the way my father drove it in 1962. It has no floorboards. It has no roof. It has no side impact bars. It's got Nerf bars. The tires are standard ply tires, and that's the way they raced in 1962.